So we've talked about Jackson in terms of the Indian Removal Act, and we've talked about him in terms of the Bank War, but probably the most ominous sign for the future of the United States at this point would be the Nullification Crisis. Now, the Nullification Crisis is this idea that was developed by John C. Calhoun and a few others in response to something called the Tariff of Abominations. Now, the Tariff of Abominations was called this by Southerners, and we remember all that stuff we talked about with tariffs. The idea that these taxes on imports are passed along to the consumers, and it's the Southerners that are impacted most by this because they're the ones doing the farming, not the production. Anyways, the Tariff of Abominations was viewed by the Southerners as particularly offensive and is passed at this time under the Jackson administration in 28. And Calhoun, who's from South Carolina, who had actually had ties to the Jackson administration, but now was kind of an enemy of Jackson, he goes back to South Carolina and writes something called the South Carolina Exposition and Protest. And in this document, he argues that states should be allowed to nullify an act of Congress. And more than that, they have the ability to nullify an act of Congress because to do so is tied back to the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions written by Jefferson, somebody that had ties, and Madison had ties to the constitutional founding generation that said they could nullify an act of Congress as well. So Calhoun is arguing that they should be able to nullify or not have to follow this law in South Carolina. This is going to lead to a big nullification crisis, but more importantly, I wanted to note that this is sectionalism rearing its head again, because in the South is developing this idea that the states are the ones that created the Constitution, that during the ratification process, each individual state ratified, so they feel that they should be able to each state should be able to influence the Constitution. But in the North, we're starting to get this concept that it wasn't the states that ratified the Constitution, it was the people that ratified the Constitution. So even in, say, South Carolina, there were people that were unionists that believed that nullification shouldn't happen. So those people needed to have their voice heard as well. And what we're starting to see with this sectionalism is the storm brewing that's eventually going to lead to the Civil War.